To introduce this session, I was thinking about, well, why are we discussing AI now? I kind of covered it all earlier, but to give a personal perspective, in September 2022, I was encouraged by the university to replace the exam for my data science course with coursework. And so I enthusiastically did that. And then in November 2022, of course, the public release of ChatGPT happened, and we realized just how risky that had been. Fortunately for me, I didn't use an essay question, and it's been robust, but yeah, it was a real scare, and we're continually trying to deal with it. Only 18 months later, my kids have an AI maths tutor that they use in Khan Academy. They can fight AI dragons in AI dungeons, all completely generated by this technology. My PhD students can code in just plain text, and Copilot does all the hard work, and they're 10 times more efficient than I am. These big GPT models that we would discuss this morning, I've got one on my laptop, and of course I don't really know what to do with it. To actually do anything useful with it requires a whole bunch of engineering that I haven't got the time to do. Instead, I asked it to write a joke. So this is the Llama chatbot, and it said, well, why is Llama better than ChatGPT? Because Llama doesn't just process language, it spits out personality too. Yeah. It will diligently explain why that's funny as well, if you ask me. To be fair, I also asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said, I'm better than Llama because I process queries, not CUD. We know there were 3 jokes there, and the AI got bigger laughs than I did, so I think that tells you everything. The time of AI is now, and let's begin the session. So we'll start by introducing ourselves.
Hello, everyone. Good. So my name is John Olukuru from Nairobi, Kenya, in Africa, not Bristol. I'm the head of data science and analytics. I love coming to the UK because I got my PhD over here a few years ago when there was a financial crisis. So I had some nice experiences there. At the moment, what I do at Strathmore University, I'm a faculty at the business school, but also I'm a researcher with a research center, we call it at iLab Africa, where we use technology to see if we can create impact. So mainly with my team, we look at data. Now we're being told there's big data, there is smart data, to see if we can get knowledge, information, insights, and now we are trying to see if we can bring some impact into that. So our specialty at the moment has moved from finance to health, agriculture, renewable energy, and recently we are just doing something on climate change. So we have a carbon calculator for Kenya. Thank you. Hopefully to share more as we go ahead. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Laura. Some of you might have heard me talk about my love of multi-bots and how we don't have enough bots. I'm the founder and technical CEO of Taught by Humans. I call myself technical CEO because I'm the only employee and I do everything. So I'm the Chief Everything Officer of Taught by Humans. Taught by Humans is focusing on making sure everyone has the skills they need in AI and data for the future of work.
I'm Albert Sanchez-Graells. I'm a professor of economic law at the University of Bristol and co-director of the Center for Global Law and Innovation. I'm probably the only skeptic about AI you will hear this morning, and that's because I am not an AI specialist. I'm a law and regulation specialist, and I know what the state can do with very powerful tools, and I'm really worried. So I'll share my worries with you. Thank you for listening to my venting.
So to generate questions, I thought hard and came up with a list, and then I realized I was doing this wrong, and I asked ChatGPT for some questions. So broadly speaking, we agreed about what were the most important things, but there's a few things on here that ChatGPT didn't think of, in particular relating to Albert's speciality. So we'll start then. As AI systems are increasingly used in sensitive areas like healthcare and law enforcement, what are the most pressing ethical issues that we face today? What steps should we take to address them?
I think it's interesting that we're calling out AI in some of these issues. So the issue around using AI in law enforcement and things like that, we've actually seen non-AI technologies being used in these situations, and they're already having problems. So there's a book called Weapons of Math Destruction, which I find quite interesting, and it's all about the use of data and things around like broken window theory. So like in America, or the US, they decided that certain areas where there was lots of petty crimes was where they were going to police harder, so then people started getting in trouble. So these things are already happening. And I think we're at risk of blaming AI for some stuff that already exists in society. Yes, it might make it worse, but actually instead of trying to regulate AI, should we not be fixing the societal problems?
Yeah.
But I think that just cannot happen, because you're building the AI on the data that comes from the society we have. When you try to create a machine that is, whether it's AI or it's an algorithm that tries to predict recidivism, this builds on decades of racist and minoritized oppressive systems of criminal enforcement. So there's no way you can create a tool that is going to be neutral.
So don't build the AI then, is what I'm
Don't build
saying.
it. That's exactly.
like stop blaming AI, fix society. Who cares about AI? Sorry, wrong conference for that.
Great. I'm sure we'll circle back to these issues. Okay, so the next question is around financial crises, which remain a threat, of course, to the economic system across the globe. How does the panel feel about the contribution of AI to either greater or lesser economic stability as part of early warning systems or interventions? And that, John,
Okay.
done this.
Yeah, but first of all, maybe I should just start with the little discussion just coming up and say AI is already here. I think we have to find a way to embrace it and maybe minimize the side effect we'll be able to cause from there. I remember when I was just training a board of directors for one of the largest banks in Kenya, and the chair, who is quite advanced, he keeps on saying his BBC was born before computers. So he'll say, what is this AI? What is this AI? Why is it AI if humans have to use it? So he wants to call it MAI, Man and Artificial Intelligence. But I think at the end of the day, if I come to the question of financial crisis and early warning system, you realize at the end of the day, all the financial crises that have been occurring, some were caused by man, others were by external forces, and therefore we're trying to say, is there data out there that can be able to help us predict in advance? I don't know how many people knew COVID was coming. It also was one of the impacts that was just coming closer to crashing the markets all through across the world. So if possible, that's the plans that you can say AI can be able to be utilized. But still it comes in and say, who will train the AI models? What kind of data will be selected? By who? So that human intelligence really need also to be checked all through, be able to say. So there's just a comment I was trying to look at it over here. AI is not just about the efficiency gain or this early warning system that can predict all that. But at the end of the day, it can open more possibilities. So an example I can give in Kenya for this bank, I was training the board of directors, and they were just trying to say, what's the future of banking with all this AI stuff? And we're trying to say, other than being worried of a bank going down because you've been lending to people who will not be able to pay, and then you have to come up with an AI system coming up with a credit scoring system. Could it be a possibility that AI can come up with a score, but also recommend? So if John cannot afford to borrow what he's trying to ask for, then can you give him an alternative? And an example will be banks fear funding agricultural projects because at the end of the day, you are never sure about the weather. Today you are told it's going to be raining, 50% chance. Then you come out, it's all sunny. It comes sunny and then all unpredictable. So the idea could be, is it possible John has an agricultural project, then check the data set to say, what kind of agricultural activity can he do? So if he can't afford to be given a loan to go buy his nice Ferrari, but for this agriculture, John, forget about Ferrari, you can plant some onions. In 3 months, you'll harvest and you can buy a Vitz or you have a Mini Cooper here. That could be the best one for me. So the idea here could be the early warning system that can predict external shocks. That could be something much more okay. But there's a challenge. I know People here are anticipating a new government or the change of government. Now the problem comes there. How can AI predict what regulations the next government will bring through that can safeguard the markets? Because you always realize this government comes through, the markets react in a certain way. Now that data will always vary. So of course, we put trust in the machine learning, in the artificial intelligence models, that they can be able to predict the behavior. It's never always that easy. I can speak until the next day. Let's stop at that at the moment. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Does anybody else want to add to the financial question? No. Again, we'll circle back. We're going to go to the big one right now, which is AI replacing jobs. So, how is AI changing roles and responsibilities at work, and what does this mean for the future of work? And Laura, would you like to start?
Yeah. I think we don't really know how it's going to change things at the minute. And we go through, as I mentioned in my talk earlier, we go through like waves where we decide certain jobs are most at risk. And I think off the top of my head, we had carpenter for a while, and then the UK government released a report that had looked at individual tasks. And by looking at individual tasks, they decided that the job most at risk of being automated was waiters and waitresses, which isn't one, because a lot of their small tasks can be automated, but as a whole job, it can't really. And then we had another wave where we were obsessed with the fact that accountants, so like companies like PwC and EY were releasing reports saying accountants were going to be automated, but that's most of their workforce. So, and now we've had another wave recently where we said all computer programmers are going to become redundant because chatbots can now code. None of this is true. Our jobs are going to change, and I think jobs are going to be lost, so people are going to lose their jobs. And that is awful, and we need to learn from past industrial revolutions how not to deal with that. And what we need to do is be training people and giving them pathways into new jobs. And there are some companies that actually at the minute are looking at automating parts of people's jobs and giving them another role or responsibility based on that. I think it was Sanchez, the consulting firm, could have automated 17,000 jobs and did automate them, but redistributed the workers so they all kept their jobs. And the government should be incentivizing companies to do things like that rather than incentivizing to automate tasks and automate things. Humans are better at lots of stuff. AI is better at some things, working out how these work together so that people can have meaningful, the joy is hopefully we can automate all the boring bits and then we get to do the good bits. So it doesn't need to write and it doesn't need to be creative, but it can do really boring processes, and that's my take on it. You're going to have a totally different take.
Yeah.
No, I think the problem is that without doing the boring stuff, it's very hard to do the value-added stuff in many places. So say lawyers, they're thinking, oh, we're going to basically automate paralegal work because, the AI can sift stuff, can create summaries and so on. But if you have not done that, you have not developed the critical skills that are necessary for when the summary is given to you, make sense of it, see if it's wrong or not. So I think what we have is a very big challenge in deciding what is the trade-off between keeping first spare capacity, because the AI will go wrong at some point and we'll have to step in and do those boring things we didn't like to do. We still need to know how to do them. We need to be able to do them. Somebody needs to be at hand. But also we need to understand the very complex processes of scaffolding that takes us to the higher value. And I'm not sure we're there. I'm not sure we know it. And the temptation to sort of gain efficiency very quickly just because it's expensive, especially in the public sector where the cash is so short, is very high. But if you haven't been putting together, say, planning applications, very boring, but you will be in a very difficult position when it comes to assessing them. So I think it's more complicated than that. I don't think we can slice bits of the job because jobs develop over time and interact in ways that are difficult. So I don't think it's that sort of.
I was going to say, I think we have different views on what the word boring means. So I don't necessarily mean boring to mean entry-level stuff. I mean automatable stuff. So learning your skills. So I'm a data person. Data entry is quite boring and repetitive, and there actually isn't a lot gained from entering data. You don't become a better data analyst because you sat and typed out some data. So that bit of the job can be automated, and the analysis part, the bit that actually could use some human interaction, but is still seen as a boring job to most people. I think reflecting on things and working out, like, boring is the wrong word, potentially.
Yeah. Okay. Just maybe to add on that discussion, we always think of we are going to lose jobs or people lose jobs, but I think I like what Laura mentions. Jobs will change. I think what we have to really come up with is adaptation models, and that comes to universities, the way we teach our students, preparing them for the work that they're going to face will not be the same as what has been. And replacement for the boring word could be routine jobs. So something that's repetitive can now be automated, allow the machine to do. I remember I got a colleague who was given to be in charge of a grant, and she had a master's in agribusiness and everything. Now she had a chance to be able to manage a value chain for maize production in Kenya. And someone just joked, finally, you leave the routine, boring job, and you'll have something to use your intelligence. So she felt a bit hit, but it was true. Most of the time she just used to come and check, and the office is clean, are the doors locked? It was something routine, which maybe just need to have an alarm. If the door is not locked, it rings up and somebody will go and check it through. But now she'll go start thinking, what do these farmers need? What do you require over here? Can we change the variety of seeds? Can we look at something else there? I've been watching this fellow, I think he's a futurist, Leon Bard, and he'll say, what really is happening in the future, most of us even don't know. We can't even try to imagine what will happen. Most of the things, our work will be kind of human-centric, something about the heart. Okay, so those are human values. Those are the kind of job that maybe we might be secure, but all that we're trying to do, maybe next time we'll have robots here discussing what's happening with AI. It will keep on changing. So we just have to adopt. And analogy I give it here is like a candle. We like the light, by the end of the day, very soon the candle gets finished. And then something else have to be reworked on that particular candle works.
It's an interesting point. I think when I think about it, I think about how currently being a social media manager is quite a good job. So they're quite well paid. If you work for a big company, there's a lot of social media companies out there. But I'm a millennial, so I remember whenever social media kind of first came in and people were talking about, oh, these millennials and their little Instagrams and their whatever, and it was seen as something really stupid that people did in their bedrooms, and it was never seen as something that was going to take off. And it's now quite a good job, and it's a job people go to university and people study for. And I think we're kind of at the point where it's the next wave of jobs that are coming in. So I know, anyone heard the term prompt engineer? Was people were saying people were going to be prompt engineers. They were going to learn how to prompt ChatGPT models and things. And that isn't really a job, but a lot of younger people learned how to do that really well. And now they're quite valuable in most offices. So again, people, like most offices, they need people who can talk to ChatGPT. So actually teaching younger people to be curious and to think about things and to actually play around with new technology is the way we're going to make sure they keep having jobs. It doesn't matter what the boring routine job is, just keep them learning, and then they can come in and add value, because that's what the future is going to be about at the end of the day.
But I think it's not about young people or the future only. This is about today, and it's about all of us, right? And I think this country and many others has really neglected lifelong learning, has really neglected coming to education later in life. And this is going to be a very significant issue. Anybody who has 25 years of working experience ahead of them really needs to start thinking now about these changes, whether we like them or not, they're coming. And I think we need to do more to make resources available for people to train themselves.
Yeah.
I agree.
So the other aspect of the jobs being augmented with AI is that we should become more efficient at our jobs. That means that somewhere there's benefit coming at the societal level, right? So it's a societal structure problem if people not having jobs because of it is now an issue, right? Mm-hmm. We need to figure out why that is. This isn't new, it's just massively more important we deal with it now because of this challenge.
But it's also about who keeps the advantage, right? I don't see an employer saying, you're very good now at doing things, you can go home at 3, and I'll pay you the same. It's just not going to happen, right? So there's all this change of extraction, and productivity gains always go to the same place. So I think at some point we also need to think about what is the reasonable productivity people should have, and change the models. It's not only about how many hours you work, but it's about what reasonable level of tasks are you expected to conduct, and sharing this in a more fair way. Otherwise, what's going to happen is we're going to have also less and less jobs, because if people can do more in the same job, then less people are needed in that category of jobs also.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about government. So as governments adopt AI systems, what role should transparency play in fostering public trust in AI systems deployed by those agencies? And Albert, go ahead.
I think transparency should be a precondition. So I think if we ask today, what is the Bristol City Council doing in terms of using AI? What is any of the departments in the UK doing in terms of using AI? The reality is nobody knows. And back in 2020, the Center for Data Ethics and Innovation, now relabeled the Responsible Technology Adoption Unit, basically issued a recommendation that it should be mandatory for any public sector entity that uses an algorithm or an AI to disclose details of that. Not disclose the whole thing, but at least say, we're using an AI, it's this sort of thing, and we use it for this purpose. This didn't happen because the government downgraded the recommendation to voluntary use. I would take bets on how many disclosures have been made now. This has been in place for 4 years. Can anybody guess?
0?
0.
Well, it's not 0, but it's 7. 7 because there was a pilot for 6, and then somebody else was well-intended. But it's 7 disclosures through 4 years on a UK-wide basis. There are charities trying to get more information. It's very difficult. They put in freedom of information requests, and through that, they have unearthed about 60 cases. And they are cases that you would expect. We know that algorithms are being deployed by the Home Office at the border. We know that they're being deployed in prisons. We know that they're being deployed to screen for fraud in sham marriages. We are deploying AI against the ones we think are undeserving, the ones that don't have voices to push back. And this is how it's going to creep into all of us. So I think we should flatly demand transparency. We need to know what's going on. Then we can have a debate about whether we like it, we don't like it, whether it should happen, and so on. But without transparency, to my mind, the social contract is broken. I don't think government should be doing this in the shades.
Does anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, just a comment. I think I like what Sanchez just mentioned. A lot has been hidden under data protection rules. So people always try to say that these laws, that these protection laws, but that has been always on the use of data. But I think, as you're saying, we should go beyond just data privacy and now try to say, what are you doing with the data? What kind of models are you developing with this data? What kind of decisions are you going to make from that data? And I think I speak from a developing country. We copy everything from the West. Okay, so we just came up with a data strategy. The UK government funded it. Of course, they were there looking, what are we trying to do? We have to come to UK and see what can we adopt. Now, we are behind all these models and everything. We are now developing an AI strategy. And I've just brought some ideas from this place to see, we need to come up with all those data hazard scenarios. Fine, this data has been picked up. This is what the government is trying to do. Because in developing country, security takes priority. And they tell you, we wouldn't mind about whatever you're trying to say. We are counter-terrorists. So this is going to be taken, this is going to be used, wherever it could be to be done. But I hope, as now we can say, all of us can come through. It's not just data privacy. Let's also be transparent with what we're trying to do with the data, the models being used, how ethical they are, and what insights, decision, policies will end up being developed from that. Nice one. Yeah. Thanks, Sanchez.
Yeah. But I think the point on data privacy keeps coming up, and it has nothing to do with data privacy.
Yeah.
Right? When you tell the government, tell me what algorithm or what AI you're using, you're not asking for any details about anybody's data. True. Loads of the things have to do with stuff that is about corporate, right? So in these pilots, one of them was an AI that tries to identify which restaurants are likely to fall foul of hygiene inspections, which has no privacy implication, right? So I think there's a lot that is used as an excuse. There's also lots of used as an excuse saying, oh, this is commercial sensitivity, so I cannot tell you I'm using an algorithm because if I tell you that, then I'm disclosing details. No, you're not, right? So you're simply telling me Palantir has sold you an algorithm. That's great. You're not giving me the details of the algorithm. So I think we need to start demanding loads more transparency and minimizing the issues about what is actually sensitive, what should actually not go out, to the level that makes sense. Yeah. The other thing that is important is also how these things integrate with each other. right? So it's also not enough for them to say, oh, I am using an AI to, I don't know, recognize license plates in Bristol because of the clean air zone, and then I'm using an AI to check people that haven't paid things to the vehicle registration authority, because those two things can be crossed, right? And then immediately what you have is an automated surveillance of who's paying and not paying their taxes. So it's also more complicated than that. And I think we need to really have a conversation about that, because otherwise we're going to live in Minority Report before we realize.
I guess what's the solution then? So is it that people who aren't currently involved in government need to make a task force and demand these things? And how do you make sure it's like a cross-section of the community that's actually doing that? So I don't know. I really like the idea of having like an AI committee or an AI council like they've done for like the green energy kind of stuff, getting more people involved, making sure people have the right language to be able to even question how these models are being used, because we do kind of sit here in a position of privilege, like academics and people who work in AI. And that maybe isn't like we're the ones who can demand things, but we need to be demanding things on behalf of everyone. And I think there's still like a misstep somewhere. Like what do people actually care about? We're kind of deciding for them. So yeah, I don't know. Anybody want to start like an AI council or an AI committee and get that going?
But that's Parliament, right? So that's a call for Parliament, and they have to legislate this.
But we almost have to tell them what to be doing. So when you say we need to demand things and we need to do stuff, it feels like a misstep.
No, it's basically, this is not in the people's minds. This is nothing that people are thinking in the terms of general election, for example. This is not something people are talking to their MP about. But this is something Parliament should be legislating. The government put out a white paper on AI in 2023 that basically said, we're going to do nothing. Yeah. There was pushback, and they said, well, we will do nothing, but the regulators will figure it out. They are not figuring it out. But we very much live in a wait and see and double speak. We had the Bletchley Declaration. We want to lead internationally in responsible AI. We create the AI Safety Institute. We are putting nothing in the rule book to facilitate pushback, to facilitate challenge. And we're just accepting it. And all of these tools of self-regulation, let's talk about it, let's have a council, they're just not going to cut it. These are potentially very dangerous technological deployments, right? I'm not talking about the technology being problematic. The deployment and the use of it is very problematic potentially. What the European Union has done with the AI Act is to say there are things that are prohibited, there are things that are high risk. When something is high risk, you have to register yourself, you have to comply with lots of requirements. Nothing like that is happening in the UK. We need to start asking for that, because we now live in an AI paradise. Anyone can come to UK and test in the real world an AI solution with no regulatory constraints, and that's something that I don't think should be happening.
But who is we in that situation? Sorry.
We is society, we is all of us.
But you've just said no one else cares, so like who's asking? Yeah, I think that's my point. I think the disconnect is you keep saying people need to ask for stuff, but like people not in this room don't know what they need to ask for. So how do we deal with that disconnect?
But that's what the political system is about.
But it's
not everybody can be in the room all the time.
Yeah, but we need to make sure we're representing everybody.
That's why representative elections are happening.
I guess to give credit where it's due, the government know that this is a problem, and one of the reasons they created the Turing Institute was to generate a pathway of information flow from experts into the government. Whether it works, that's a different question, but it's the intention. Great. So the next question is about societal bias. AI is, of course, very risky to generate them. So what strategies can we use to reduce the bias in our algorithms and try to ensure fair, equitable outcomes?
From a bias point of view, I think just being aware of the models you're using and the fact that they are biased and the outputs might be biased. So we've talked a lot today about OpenAI and ChatGPT, and they haven't been very open or transparent about what's actually been fed into those models to train them. They just say the internet. And what does that actually mean, and what data is actually going into it? So actually, if you're using things like that, there's no reason to not use it because it's biased. Just actually like thinking about the fact that it's biased and knowing that whenever you're getting results is something to think about. And yeah, similar with the open source is being touted as like the main solution to bias, but actually humans have to make decisions about how those models are trained. So we're going to be putting a different type of bias in. So I think just being highly aware that AIs aren't these magical fix-all for human problems and human biases, and thinking about that whenever you're using it, and thinking about the ethics and the human side of your use cases whenever you're using it is something that's very important and often missed.
Yeah, I'm tied between saying what to be done and who to do it. Because at the end of the day, when you talk about biases, they originate from people. And you see from the discussion, we are trying to say AI cannot be left alone, should be guided by someone. Now, again, we have this challenge. The person developing the models are the ones who might have the biases, and then they can drive the whole entire model algorithm towards some aspects there. So when it comes to the government side perspectives, so maybe the lawyers, wherever, policymakers, to come up with proper guidelines, maybe something. I know when I deal with EU, UK projects, we have a kind of a simple test to check my personal biases. Just to realize, how do I look at people from this continent? How do I consider this kind of scenarios? And with that, it shapes your mind to realize, already I have these biases as I begin this kind of a project. So some guidelines to just mitigate all that. But now it comes to the developers. So the AI, machine learning people, I think the key thing is to keep that in mind, that after developing the whole entire algorithm, the results you get and everything, not to be quick to say, this is what it is all through. So to realize you might have put in a few parameters that have been really lagging towards your side. So if possible, it's a challenge, but maybe to try and be ethical and say, okay, fine, despite I've gotten this kind of accuracy, this kind of precision, I could have really, because I'm from Kenya, I am biased towards having all these things the African way. So maybe give an alternative to see the third-party auditors to give some more input before we can say, this is the insights, and therefore, this is the solution we are trying to put across, and this is the way to go.
Great. Thank you very much. We're going to move to the audience questions now. So they're right behind us, so I'll read them out. Okay, the first one. Well, there are many barriers despite the height. Can we give examples where AI has been used ethically to make a meaningful difference to people's lives?
I saw an example in BBC News recently where AI had been used to look at scans for breast cancer and was actually doing better than human doctors at spotting early stage breast cancer. So they've actually now taken away the learnings from the AI to try and implement it into training. For doctors, which I think is a really good use case to that one. It doesn't seem to be having any negatives, touch wood, at the minute, but it seems like a really good ethical use case of AI.
Yeah.
Just maybe from the finance perspective, I'm sure it's already happening here. Just since already most of us have the smartphones, and to start it off, you have to use your face recognition. So you realize to support refugees in the northern part of Kenya, it's a bit traumatic to get people queuing to get the self-help and everything. So they just kind of use the same idea of face recognition to provide relief, whereby you could have, like, I could say, an ATM, but you go there with just face recognition. It knows who you are, where you come from, what did you require, and you'll get the allocated ration for you. So nobody knows you are going to seek help. So you just need to go to an ATM like anybody else, but already with your face recognition, you are being supported nicely. So I know the challenge that comes up with that. Okay, fine. Whoever developed all this, what else did they have in mind? That's the ethical side of the human person. But at least something's happening. And just one more, and this now in agri-tech. So because sometimes you realize the challenge you have with AI, it's well advanced in developed countries. So there could be a kind of inequalities across the world. But we did something, a project we've been doing with my team, whereby we can try to say, all these fellows, the Maasais, the countryside, how will they be able to start using any enabled solution to support their farming? So we use the large language models to see if we can translate weather predictions, agricultural advices to the farmers, small-scale farmers up there. So you get into your phone, USSD *234#, and it can start giving you information, guidance in your own African mother tongue language. So an LLM model that can be able to get those guys to have the same kind of exposure as anyone else who is not in that particular village. So a few things that are working.
I think thinking about things as good and bad isn't the way to do it. So I work in the education field at the minute, and there is like an influx of AI tutors for everyone across, from children all the way up to adults. And it's a really interesting thing because you can argue both sides of it. You can say, okay, these are way cheaper than human tutors, so students that aren't going to get access to a tutor for their GCSEs is getting one, but is it going to be to the same standards? And actually, should we be leveling the playing field in like a different way instead of providing an AI tutor? Should we be getting more teachers in? Should we be doing something? So I think that it's a really good point. So like things can be both good and bad at literally the same time, and it's all to do with like how we implement it and how we think about how it impacts society. And yeah, I'm quite cautious of not using AI to plug gaps when actually we need to be actually fixing things.
So we've spoken mostly about kind of transformative AI, but there's the kind of incremental improvement that AI brings to regular statistical analysis. The healthcare one that you talked about earlier, I think probably falls into this category. It's a thing that is facilitating routine analysis in typically science or whatever, some component, typically healthcare, right? These are hard problems, and just getting 5% better at them makes a big difference overall in the long term. And it's certainly not AI that's to blame for any problems that come out of that incremental improvement. It's the whole system. There we go, right at the top. How do we trust open source AI models when even simple open source systems are vulnerable to malicious code?
I know in Africa they say we trust in God, the rest bring data. But now with this, the challenge comes up, okay, fine, where is the data for all that? But the challenge we always have, you find with AI and all these technologies we're coming through, is the whole aspect of cost. And therefore, that's why people go to open source. And therefore, when you talk about trust, I'm sure you go to a new city, you go to wherever, there's a high chance you'll go to Google Map to get you wherever you go. So there's always a trust. You're saying, let me follow the direction. If you get to another place, then you start again rethinking, can I get somewhere? So there's a certain percentage or level of trust, you could say, you can put in a certain aspect, of which for this case is being open source, many people are looking into it. So it can't be a black box. That's the guarantee you have. To some extent, you cannot really be 100% wrong. So 99% could be, but at least almost everybody is looking into that. So when we are helping companies and even the government sometimes to run a few things, we say, please, let's get it open. Let people see. I know with the financial sector, that's something we're fighting in Africa now, coming to open banking. Let people know what you try to do and everything. I can compare different scenarios. So everything open source to some extent, there's a high chance, a high level of you can be okay. Than if maybe the big companies have released something, you will never know. So in my class, I always say, I'm not going to talk about the big companies, whatever they do, their solutions, because I do not know. It's a black box on their side. And they'll always say, we cannot disclose because it's our priority, wherever it could be. We have a IP and many more things. So I could just mention open source, there's a high chance somebody else other than you have also tried to check. So if something passes by, it's a matter of time, it will be caught. Yeah.
But the problem is that this distinction between proprietary and open source is getting more and more mixed because the digital supply chain gets more complicated, and maybe you're going to use something that is open source, something that is proprietary, and bundle it together. So it's very difficult to know who to trust in terms of who are the responsible agents, because maybe down the line, maybe their cloud provider has done something they don't know about. And this is getting increasingly important. The other thing is the conversation changes significantly when you talk from trust or from accuracy into risk, right? So if there is an 80% chance that Google is going to take me from here to my house through a place that I can access, I can think it's pretty good. But if I think it's a 20% chance that it's going to take me through a place I cannot go to because I'm going on my scooter and there are going to be staircases, all of a sudden the same information completely flips. That talks to our biases.
Very true.
So I think there's lots of discussion about trust that actually is about risk. And we've also not had a very clear conversation about what is the risk we're willing to take, either societally or as people. And healthcare is a very tricky one, because you say a 5% increase it can make a big difference, yes, but a 5% increase may mean the insurance company, which thinks about risk, is going to say now to the doctors, either you use the AI, which is 5% better than you, or you're going to be liable if you deviate from the AI, and that creates lots of problems. So again, it goes to the point of how does this get embedded in the socio-technical system? Where are the pressure points? When are we going to be able to critically assess because we know or because we can take the consequences of going against the AI? And so trust is a pushy word. I think risk makes people talk about things in a different way.
So that seems to imply that you want to answer the next question, which I was hesitant about, given that it's a negative one again. But right, essentially, okay, companies have got these. They're going to use AI in ways that don't benefit the public. Can we regulate companies to have different incentives? A great question.
Wow.
We can, and there is one there is one easy tool, which is tax, right? But we are at pains to tax the carbon fossil fuel companies when it's obvious that the UN said it. We need a massive windfall tax on carbon fuel companies so we can pay the transition to greener economy. This is the next one. We need a massive tax on AI companies so that we can fund the guardrails and the regulation. And I think that's the way forward. We know what we need to look for. We know where the risks are. The problem is expertise in the private sector because it pays more. And the interest in deploying is in the private sector because it monetizes. The public sector is catching up. Tax them, put the resources in the public sector, we will rebalance things.
Yep, cool, sorted. All solved. I think this is, I was going to say, I think there's also like a small risk of making sure you're taxing the big companies and not the small companies, because at the minute there's a really big monopoly in AI and bigger companies are doing significantly better, and some smaller companies, if we start taxing use of AI and things like that, is going to actually it's going to hinder innovation, it's going to slow down small companies. And personally, I think focusing on the bigger companies and making sure that they're paying their debt back to society because of how much profits they're making and things like that is what's more important, and stop letting Amazon not pay any tax in the UK because it's doing some weird accounting and things like that. That's actually where to start, just to make sure, because there is a risk of stopping people starting companies and stopping people being innovative with these technologies if we tax little companies too hard.
And moving it to the country next door.
Exactly.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I think we're at time. So thank you very much for this fascinating discussion. Let's thank the panel.